It's great to be asked to participate, and this is my third season here at the Met, and today we'll talk a little bit about what I've been able to do here, hopefully why, shed some light on that, and how I've come to learn a lot about fear and how I've come to understand and work with it. So first of all, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it's a global museum. It's a museum. As a museum, there's no particular mandate to engage with the performing arts. But of course, there's a long history at the Met of presenting music specifically, a long history of extraordinary chamber music and solo performances in our 700-seat auditorium. And that 700-seat auditorium pretty much functioned as an independent music venue with some of the most extraordinary performers, chamber ensembles, coming to perform here every year. For example, the Beaux-Arts Trio and the Guarneri String Quartet were here for decades and decades. But other than that history, when I ask myself and others here the question, what is the role of performance here at the museum? The question was pretty open-ended. Why performance? How does the live art engage with the museum, and why present it in a museum? And when I looked around, I realized that usually the live arts in the context of museums are either considered flavors of public programs, or they're arranged by kind of special events, audience, outreach departments. Neither of those areas bring the kind of curation and production rigor that the live arts would warrant in a performing arts context. So I come at the live arts from this, in the museum, from that perspective. And my job here at the Met has been sort of to act as a change agent internally, and quite frankly to use the live arts as a blunt instrument to move the needle on a few goals that I think we all share with our director here at the Met. Those goals are to engage a wide range of artists and audiences. As we just said, the Met is an encyclopedic global museum, and the live arts should reflect that. So we're looking at engaging a broader range of performance to bring artists into the collection, which is hugely important, I think, to me and to the museum. The artist in question here in this slide is Miguel Gutierrez, the choreographer and dancer, impersonating Andy Warhol in a performance while people were viewing the work. To offer new entry points to visitors who not yet consider the Met a cultural destination, as well as to offer those entry points to artists who may or may not be thinking about the Met as a potential home. And really to position the Met as a hub for ideas and conversation. The Met not just as a repository of objects, but a repository of ideas, a dynamic center for thought and performance and conversation. And maybe most importantly, to bring a kind of fresh relevance to and excitement to the Met. So far we've been able to move the dial on those goals, and I have to say I've moved very, very fast by any measure, but by Met standards I've moved that dial lightning fast. We've had a lot of firsts, a lot of challenges, and by most measures we've been pretty successful. We've had a lot of good press. The audience numbers are solid. The types of audience we're seeing are becoming much more diverse. There's a lot of growing buy-in and active involvement from other departments around the building. And interestingly, I think especially to marketing people here, over 60% of our ticket buyers are new to the museum. And of those who buy on through the web, 80% of buyers are new to us. One of the big challenges of my tenure here was to look at the possibility of engaging the live arts in the context of galleries. The image that you're seeing now is a production of the PEONY Pavilion by Tan Dun, the Chinese composer and director, which we staged within the Met's Astor Court, which is the Chinese Scholar Garden. The challenges are immense, and the fear factor, rightly so, is extraordinary because the artists, the director, the designers, the videographers, everybody has to play what I call play outside their position. They have to learn how to behave in an environment that they're completely unused to, work around artworks, work around unusual lighting situations, sound constraints, and all of that requires a huge amount of flexibility. We started with dance. I think we'll talk a lot about dance later, but one of the reasons dance is so essential is because it is three-dimensional and it's time-based, and it's and it shares those qualities with sculpture. So dance in sculpture courts resonates very strongly. Of course, dance has a huge history of being nurtured and presented in contemporary museums and contemporary art galleries, but not at all in encyclopedic or classical museums. And of course, working in galleries, you have to work with just the right choreographer to create meaningful pieces without special dance floors, with constraints around what you can do with lighting, etc. So the Met also has a 700-seat auditorium, which we can use, and we do use. But even there, it was designed as a lecture hall with good acoustics, and we have pushed that lecture hall to the limits and a little beyond the limits with events and productions that at least we try to embrace the auditorium for what it is and work with it rather than against it. And just for the record, we have not abandoned classical music. We have not completely walked away from it. We do present many classical concerts each year, but when we do, I always ask the question, why are we doing it? How are we going to do it differently than our neighbors across town or around the corner whose charter it is to present classical music? Are there any interesting venues that we can place our concerts into? Are there interesting contexts? Is there an exhibition that's going on that will create a new and interesting context for the music? Going back to artists, I think living artists are essential to an encyclopedic museum, and one of the things that I've been very aggressive about is getting artists into the mix, and one of those artists was John Zorn, who is extremely close to the Met. I didn't know this. I found out through talking to him, and we presented a full day of 12 performances over 12 hours, every hour on the hour in a different gallery, and that was a real sort of groundbreaking, game-changing moment for the museum, where people were really able, by people I mean Met curators and staff, were able to actually see the kind of change that the live arts can make in a place like the Met. Um, Another thing that I've been thinking a lot about is opera. Opera is something that combines, obviously the definition of opera, it combines the different art forms, so poetry, drama, music, visual arts, sets, etc., and to create something that's greater than the sum of the parts. And unfortunately, I think that something happened to opera in the last 100 years or so, where it just sort of became, it evolved into something that is not intimate, that is very, very big, that requires a wardrobe, and I wanted to see if we could bring it back to the people, or sort of occupy opera a little bit. And so we started working with the notion of creating opera for galleries. And I have to say, last year we produced 5 operas, 3 of them site-specific, designed specifically for Met galleries, and 2 were new commissions. So far it's been an extraordinarily successful endeavor, placing singers in the Met's galleries and working with directors who understand the complexity of that kind of work and of that kind of setting has been thrilling and just extraordinary. Another thing that we've been doing in terms of working with artists is we established an artist in residence program, which is really not, it's just a way to give living artists an opportunity to interact deeply and over a sustained period of time with the Met as an institution. So rather than just coming in and doing a performance, the artists, for example, Alarmal Sound was in residence here last year. They were able to be with us for the year. So they worked with our education department. They worked with our access program, which provides programs for a variety of audiences that that otherwise would not be able to visit the Met. They worked within galleries. They worked in the stage. They worked, obviously, we did this crazy flash mob. And the year they spent with us changed us and changed them. And it was an extraordinary opportunity to explore some unusual collaborations. And here is a clip from a piece that we commissioned specifically for the choreographer John Heginbotham with Alarmal Sound. So you see the musicians and the dancers in the Charles Engelhardt Court performing this piece that was created specifically for the Charles Engelhardt Court. Everything that we do is videotaped and archived on our website, and people will be able to experience this work over time. So spending time with artists changes them and changes us. Speaking of fear, the last opera that we presented last year was called I Was Here, I Was I, and it was a new commission for Alarmal Sound. It was a piece that speaks about the Temple of Dendur, its history, its mythology, and its facts, and it ends with this terrifying moment where the Nubian twins, who you see here, Courtney and Caleb, taking their violins and dropping them into the Met's Nile and letting them sink to the bottom, and the air bubbles come up as they sink. That moment of extraordinary drama created so much anxiety around the building. It was a very difficult thing to achieve, and I think we learned a lot of lessons from that. I think we came closer through the process of figuring out how to do this. We came closer to our colleagues in the Egyptian department who never would have imagined such a thing, and we learned how to work with our colleagues here internally. This year we have a resident ensemble that is a theater company. They're called the Civilians, and we're going in a completely different direction. They're actually embedded in two departments, the Egyptian department and the American wing, and they will create original works of theater based on their investigations of those departments. And so we're creating basically a body of live art work that is 100% created from interactions with the Met's collections, the curators, the conservators, and the galleries. And so you can imagine there's a lot. You can imagine the levels of fear that keep everybody up at night, from the logistics to the safety of the artwork, obviously, to the interpretive power of this other art form, the live art, and how bringing other interpretations of artworks might affect the visitor experience. To who owns interpretation of the artwork. So there's a lot of fear sort of thrumming throughout the organization. And what I've come to learn from doing this for now 3 years is that the opposite of fear is trust. If I can build trust with my colleagues here, the curatorial departments, the conservators, the scholars, if I can build enough trust to let them come with us on this journey, then things start to open up. Or if I can similarly build that kind of trust in our audience base, things start to move forward, because we did move very quickly from a very from a kind of performance series where you know exactly how everything is going to end. I mean, a Beethoven trio is only going to end one way, to an open-ended situation where nobody knows, not even the composer or the director knows exactly how this is going to play out until the last rehearsal, and sometimes after that. So it's all about trust. It's all about building trust internally, externally, with the audience, with the curators, with the artists, and trusting that not only will they come to the Met and see it live, but also visit our website and look at our content and our performances online. And to date, we've had over 3 million people who have watched our content. So I think we're doing okay. There's still a lot of moving forward to do, and I'm just come back and check with me in a year or two and see if I'm still standing. Thank you very much.